Hey, Daisan here. Today I'll be bringing you the Dear Life unit review. So pretty much we have a second Dear Life collab and it has 4 new units. It is Toka, Origami, Karimi, and Yoshino. So 3 of the units are an alternate form of the ones you got from last collab, and then the last one is a totally new unit. So first of all, we're going to talk about Toka. So Toka this time is intelligence instead of heart, and she has much more attack, and her role is different. So her skill set involves having a 2 MP physical attack that buffs her dark element for 3 turns. So it's a stackable dark buff, kind of a bit on par with Albedo Pajama's like stacking buff, except it doesn't do dark damage itself. So it combos with her third skill, which is a single target 5 MP dark nuke with high elemental rate and ratios, including attack and defense shred. And then her second skill is a attack buff, which also gives 40% gauge to self at 4 MP. So the entirety of this kit is it's designed in a way where you buff yourself once with the overdrive for 40%, and then you're trying to get the full gauge with the 50% attack buff and the 50% dark element strength buff of your first skill, and then your third skill you're trying to nuke for 175 dark with 150 element with the 50 tech and the 50 dark, and then after that you want to nuke with your overdrive after, which is another 125 and 150 element rate. Her passives are dark elemental rate up by 25% twice to 50 and physical attack by 25. Like overall she can hit caps with her skills, so she can hit attack cap, and then she gets element rate up really high, up to 100% buff on top of that. Overall, she's super comparable to another unit we had, which was Glass, where the whole point of Glass was to ideally just nuke for 5 MP at 1 elemental type. So Glass was 165% ice with 100% element rate, and then Glass had a physical attack boost when at 4 HP, but then Toka has it a bit easier because she has a passive that gives her 25 without being at a threshold, and on top of that she has a 50% dark strengthen on her skill, so on her element up, compared to Glass, which did not have it for her ice skill. So with a higher ratio and higher passive buffs, even though she's missing 15% attack, she hits that at all HP thresholds, and she has a bonus 50% dark strengthen to make up for the 50% less attack she'll get. So overall, I'd say Toka is a strong unit, which is like a better Glass, except for the fact that she is dark instead. She may have a bit less attack, but that doesn't really matter with her ratios being a bit higher. The about 150 attack difference won't really make that big of a difference. The next unit we'll be talking about is Origami. Last time she was an enhancer who had defensive buffs. This time she's a tank with defensive buffs. So her first skill is a 4 MP AoE. This is kind of different than original Origami's, which was a 5 MP. So this is a bit cheaper, does about the same damage, debuff speed instead of defense. Her second skill is a 3 MP self buff. So what it says here is it removes the negative buffs from yourself and the negative statuses from yourself, and it gives 100% defense. So this is a bit different than the original Origami, who had been able to throw defensive shields on people to block a physical hit, and to also give you 15% defense. That also got buffed recently as well. But besides that, as a tank, giving yourself a bit more defense isn't bad. Removing negative statuses from yourself does help if you have defense downs and speed downs. And removing negative statuses effects is a bit not as great, because if you get hit by things that prevent you from choosing an action, such as like sleep or paralysis or seal, then removing the negative status doesn't mean much. This removes pretty much like poison and burn and other statuses that are kind of like dots instead. Her fourth skill is her tank skill, which gives her 200% provoke for 3 turns, which is the new norm for all tank units now, and it gives her 100% damage reduction for 2 stacks. This is higher than Naofumi's and Gladiator Ain's 80% reduced stacks, but both of those stack 4 times. So this leaves her lacking for when she gets attacked by multiple units on the same turn. Besides that, they try to mitigate this difference with her passive, which is an 80% damage reduction while she is above 90%. With Origami's base HP at 8,606 at max level, by throwing a relic with about 1,400 HP or more, you change her threshold of being able to take about 1,000 damage before she loses this passive. So, the first hit will get reduced, and as long as it's below 1,000 damage that goes through, you should be able to get the second hit to be reduced as well. Realistically, what this means in harder content is that she's only going to block one attack before she's outside of this threshold of reduced damage. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. It's a bit more difficult to play around, but if you surround her with like good healers and like you match your timings with her speed and the speed of your healers, it shouldn't be too much of an issue to make her a really serviceable tank. Besides that, her other passive is, while she is below a threshold, she gains more attack and speed. Realistically, this is not what you want on a tank unit. You would rather have either more defense, just like Halloween Solution does, or having another way of maybe even having regen kick in if you're below a threshold. I think regen kicking in would be nice, but realistically, that would be a bit harder to implement. Her overdrive is 12 hits of 18% dark magic to all enemies. Not a bad overdrive at all. It has a high elemental rate at 150%, and it also has the attack cut of 45% to all enemies. This will definitely help her take less damage if she can get it off. So it adds to her kit, but besides that, she's a bit worse for wear than some of the newer tanks that came out recently due to having kind of a more difficult playstyle to work around setting up her taunt, getting the damage reduction stats up, and then having her passive activate. The thing is, when she does taunt, she removes her passive completely, so you're not guaranteed free attacks reduced. It's only the 2 stacks, and then after that, she needs to get hit once and healed above the 90% threshold before she gets her 80% damage reduction. So that's what's kind of holding her back from being a top tier tank. Besides that, if you look at a direct comparable, you kind of have Gladiator Ainz with kind of the same issue. His taunt is 5 MP instead of 4, so she has a bit of an easier time, but he has like 4 stacks of 80% reduction, so that means he can actually tank a full wave of 4 enemies, while Origami would end up only tanking 2 and taking full damage from 2 more attacks. Overall though, I still say she is a bit better than Gladiator Ainz due to the consistency of 200% provoke over 150% provoke, because even with 200% provoke, you're not guaranteed to draw the aggro of all the attacks, unlike cover, and I feel like as a passive, having 1 stack of magic damage that gets removed and not refreshed, it's kind of a wasted passive as well, even though she has kind of a bad passive with the attack and speed up. So carrying on, we'll go into our next unit, which is Yoshino. She is making her first appearance in the Day Life collab with Overlord, and she is a tech enhancer. She has one of the fastest speeds in the game at 445. She also has an additional 10% speed buff on her passive kit. So she does hit one of the highest speeds in the game, and she's definitely one of the faster enhancers that we have, which is always good. Besides that, her stacks are a bit lacking in HP and defense, but that's fine. And she actually has a fairly average attack for an enhancer, like above average, at close to good attacker base stats. Her first skill is a 5 MP AoE, which does 77% ice damage with a really good elemental rate of 100. She also inflicts Freeze, which is a brand new status ailment, which is similar to Burn pretty much, where they take damage over time for the set amount of turns, which would be 2. As an enhancer, she has a buff and a debuff. Her buff is a 3 MP buff with 30% attack, 35% defense, and 25% speed. And then as a debuff, she has a 35% attack, 30% defense, and 30% speed debuff. Both at 3 MP makes her pretty much a better version of Pandora's Actor. Pandora's Actor has 25, 15, 10. For a debuff only to 1 enemy at 2 MP, even though the MP cost is cheaper, the ratios are much, much lower. So you don't get the exact same results that you're looking for. Same thing with his buff. It is the same free MP cost, but it gives less speed, and it gives damage reduction, which interferes with a lot of the top tanks in the game, and it gives a bit less attack as well. So Yoshino overall is, I would say, the best general buffer debuffer in the game. Her passive is 100% freezing resist, which at the moment doesn't really mean much, because no enemy units except for the ones appearing in the collab will have a chance of freezing you. And then her passive is 10% speed and 50% magic attack. The speed helps her act first, which is always a plus for buffers, so that you can buff your units before they act or debuff the enemies before they act. The 50% magic attack is kind of just like the cherry on top, letting her kind of like farm it out with her 5 MP AoE skill. Her overdrive is a AoE ice nuke with good rate up. It inflicts 45% speed down, which is always nice, and then it inflicts freeze status and lasting up to 2 turns, which isn't awful. I'd still say, like, yeah, Yoshino is probably one of the better units in this current collab. Super strong buffs, super strong debuffs. Really good for like all general purposes. You could take it to raids, you could take the endgame content. I am a fan of this unit. Besides that, our last unit is Karimi. So she makes a return. Just like Toka, she switched her typing. So instead of intelligence, she is hurt this time, and instead of an enhancer, she is an attacker. She hits that nice benchmark of 8100 attack, which is kind of the new standard we have for Gen 3 unit stats, and she's fairly quick at 412 speed itself. Her first skill is very similar to like Wet Irons with his stun at 35% at free MP. She has the same thing with free MP, a bit lower percentage chance, but like feel like a better ratio of actual damage going through. Her next skill is a buff to herself for free MP. It's 35% physical attack, 50% skill damage physical, and 30% humanoid killer for 3 turns. A really good steroid for attack up, not the best in like raid situations unless they are weak to like they are a human type character, and then her damage starts spiking immensely. Her third skill is a 5 MP AoE, deals 3 to 5 hits of 32% to all enemies. The actual hit rate of hits past 3 is about 30%. So she has a harder time than units like Nazik Shizu, which has about an 85% chance to land additional hits. So you do need a really good aim increase on her to try to maximize those 5 hits constantly. But when she does get those 5 hits in, she's one of the strongest AoE units in the game, similar to that of Enri and Nazarick Demiurge at neutral. Besides that, her passives go all in on the humanoid killer aspect of herself. So she has 15% on one passive, 20% on another passive, giving her 35%. And if you were to stack her buff, she'd have a 65% humanoid killer into her kit already. And then the plus 25% physical attack damage adds a bit of oomph to the rest of her kit. Her overdrive is a 125% dark physical AoE with good heal attached to it, so it's very similar to Swimsuit Solution's overdrive as well, where she heals, except this is glorious dark AoE to everything. I would say overall all the Data Live units are super strong. If you are needing a good single target nuke, there's Toka. You need a serviceable tank, you have Origami. You need a buffer debuffer, you have Yoshino, and you need an AoE damage dealer, then you have Karimi. So thank you so much for watching this video, and good luck pulling for your Dear Live units. Peace.